Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Monday Mindset Mastery with Lori McDowell. Today, we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk a little bit about the pauper mindset versus the millionaire mindset. And I know a lot of you may find that you have, some preconceived notions about money, about what wealth means. So today, my guest is Jennifer Glass and Jennifer R. Glass, because there are probably a lot of Jennifer Glasses. So Jennifer R. Glass. And we're going to talk about, how you can change your mindset to get, because I think most people would choose the millionaire mindset over the pauper mindset if they had a choice. So, hi, Jennifer. Thank you for being here. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you said you're a business growth architect, and we were introduced by a mutual connection. But I'd love to hear about what you do and a little bit more about how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. And first of all, Lori, thank you so much for having me. And hello, everyone who is tuning in and watching. You are taking the first step or the first steps in really making a very big difference in what you do. And the first thing really is trying to do personal and self improvement is one of those best things you can be doing for you and your business. As Lori mentioned in the introduction, talking about the millionaire or the pauper mindset, there's a very big difference between the two. When you think about where you're coming from, what you're doing, that's what I try and help people realize. You can be a lot more in the millionaire mindset instead of the pauper mindset. As a business growth architect, I work with businesses that are really struggling to generate the leads, the profits, the opportunities, and I help them turn that around. And a lot of the times it really does come down to thinking first and foremost. And I'm not a life coach, nothing against life coaches or anything, but those people that say the answer is within you, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes it's just you really need to think differently and you need to look at things a little bit differently. And that's where I really do try and come in strategically and say, look, let's think about doing things this way instead of that way. Let's see what kind of new results we can get and see how we can really start growing from there.
Oh, I love that. That sounds great. Yeah, that strategy is so important. Think I like the way you say it has to do with thinking. So, it's yeah. Sometimes people say I've heard people say, "Oh, everything you can manifest what you want." And it's kind of like, well, you can't. Yes, you can manifest what you want, yet you do have to take action. You do have to do some planning. You can't just say, "I want $1 million and I have the millionaire mindset," and sit there and wait for it to fall in your lap. You do have to do something. So tell us a little bit about, tell us about your journey. How long have you been doing this, and how did you get into, business growth area?
Absolutely. And the first thing I actually wanted to go back because you mentioned you want $1 million. And I mentioned earlier that I work profit, right, as one of the things that I focus on. And I just wanted to throw it out there because you did say just a moment ago you want $1 million. And there's a very big difference, by the way, with saying I want $1 million business. Do you want $1 million business that's bringing home $100,000 at the end of the year? Or do you want $1 million business that's bringing home $700,000 at the end
Oh,
of the
yeah,
year? Very, very big difference in the
very
way you
much.
look
Yeah.
at things, the way you operate your business too. Revenue feeds your ego, profit feeds your family. So just keep that in mind. Understand how all of that is really making a difference and how the little things that you change can really produce major results. So now to go back to your question. So I have been in my own business now for 20 years. It
Wow.
started as a credit card processing business back in 2005. And what basically happened was people kept on saying, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. And each time I kept on helping them figure out exactly what it was that they were looking at doing. And they came back and said, I need something else. And so what ended up happening was that by 2015, give or take, I was coaching clients and I was doing it in exchange for future residuals on the credit card processing side. And then I
Mhm.
started working with my own coaches in 2017. And I realized pretty quickly I need to change the way that I'm actually operating my business, right? Because I wasn't yet at that millionaire mindset, too. And
Mhm.
I'm talking the talk, walking the walk here, same thing. There's a very big difference when you're focusing on, all right, I'm going to make a couple of dollars, as opposed to I am serving that many more people and being in a position to really be doing that much more because I have that much more. And so when you think about what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're trying to do, what it is that you are really bringing out there and putting out there to everyone, there is a very big difference. And so in 2018, I rebranded my company, refocused the efforts. We are primarily a business growth coaching organization. So again, working, like I said, with the clients, helping them with the leads, profits, whatever it is that's going on in their business, and helping them grow from there.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I want to go back to a couple of things you said. The first thing you mentioned, was talking about profit as opposed to revenue. And I love that because it's funny. I know people say, "Oh, I have $1 million or multi-million-dollar business," and then they're, finding credit cards to buy a $300 airfare. And I'm like, well, if you have a multi-million-dollar, how come you can't afford a $300 plane ticket or something? So it is there. You can have. I owned a franchise for a little while that was a cost reduction franchise, and it was interesting how people think of. There are different ways to think of money in your business, and the important part really is how much money do you get to keep. So, is that talking about that, is it more a mindset? Is it strategy? Is it a combination of the two? Why some businesses, bring in lots of money and don't keep any of it, whereas some businesses are very profitable. Tell us a little bit about what the keys are there.
So, part of the difference is really going to come down to, first of all, again, the way that you are operating the business. A lot of us operate where we have slim margins, others, we have better margins. Think about Shark Tank or Dragon's Den as an example, and I'm going to throw out those two TV shows. If you think about what they ask, how much does it cost to make and how much do you sell it at? Oh, that's good margins, or that's not great margins. You hear that all the time. But part of the other thing, though, is also a clear understanding on how do you calculate margins. Way too many of us say, I want a 10% margin. And I'm just going to use 10% as an example. My cost of goods is $10, so I'm going to sell it at $11. That's not a 10% margin. You're just tacking 10% on top of your cost, but that's not a 10% margin. Understanding really how to start calculating your margins, understanding the difference between gross and net, understanding all of these different pieces really starts going into the overall calculation then in terms of what you're doing. And you also need to have a better understanding of your numbers. Way too often, I run into contractors. As an example, let's take a roofer. A roofer may want a JV with a joint venture with somebody who's doing gutters because they're not doing gutters directly. They're up on the roof, they see the gutters are falling apart. They're going to recommend, hey, Mr. Homeowner, Mrs. Homeowner, your gutters are in a really bad shape. Maybe it's time that you look at getting them replaced or whatever it may be. But the gutter person is going to be saying, all right, I can give you 20%, 30% of the deal. But if they don't really understand their numbers, how much are they giving? Well, I'm charging
Mhm.
$20,000 for it. 30% is $6,000. But can your margin support a $6,000 referral fee to someone else for giving you that deal? All of these kinds of opportunities, there may be real value. Sure, I'm putting my people to work, I'm keeping them busy, and all of that. But at the end of the day, what am I getting in return? So, again, a lot needs to be going back to the basics. Do you understand what your numbers are? Do you understand what your overall costs are, your margins, your lifetime value, things along those lines? Because if you can really say yes, then you can get to $1 million with high profit a lot easier than if you don't have a clue what kind of numbers your business is actually operating with.
Okay, so that's yeah, that makes perfect sense. So really knowing the basics, even if you have that millionaire mindset, you still have to understand your business. And I think a lot, I've actually heard people talk about, I'm just going to get more clients. And it's like, well, if you're, a coach, say a coach says, okay, I coach people and they pay me $200 an hour and I'm just going to get more clients. And it's like, well, that's not going to work necessarily because you're still getting $200 an hour. Your time's about, and if you keep coaching people one-on-one, all you're going to do is run out of hours to make any more money. So that's kind of an interesting, a similar thing to like for people who have more of a their self as their business as opposed to an item. You have to know your value, like what you're worth, and just if you're valuing yourself too low, doing more of it is only going to cost you more as opposed to make you
Right.
more.
Let me just respond with 2 points, please.
Sure.
The first one is, and I want you really think about it this way: you're in a boat in the middle of the ocean, and the boat springs a leak. Okay, your business is the boat, and the holes are the profit leaks that are in your business that are keeping you from generating the kind of revenue that you're looking for. Taking on more clients is just giving another hole, right? It's not necessarily going to fix the boat. You're not plugging another hole by taking another client. If you have more expenses per client, it's just amplifying the amount of the water that's getting into the boat. So think about it from that perspective. The second thing, Lori, that you mentioned was how you value yourself. And this is one of the things I got from one of my coaches. And that is, it's called the 521 idea. And I want to illustrate it really quick this way. You work 8 hours a week, 5 days, sorry, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year. You want to make $1 million over the course of the year? You have to value each hour or get paid each hour $521 an hour. That will give you a little more than $1 million over the course of the year. But think about it this way: how many of us, and again, this is going back to the millionaire pauper mindset, how many of us are saying, I'm going to do whatever, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to go to this free network group, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do that. And they walk in, and all they're looking for is the finger foods that are at the network group. They're not thinking about a goal of, I want to walk out of here with X, right? I go to network groups. I'm looking at who can I get for a speaking engagement? Who can I get as a referral partner or a joint venture? Things along those lines. I couldn't care less about the food that's there, right? I'm looking at how do I really make the difference in what I'm doing. Millionaire mindset, pauper mindset. You value your time or you don't value your time, right? A lot of things go in there. Pauper asks how much money is it going to cost. A millionaire asks how much time is it going to take.
Interesting question. I like that. The time versus money. Yeah. And I had not heard that 521 but thing there, but that's interesting because people say sometimes think, oh, yeah, I'm charging $200 or $300 an hour. And it's like, yeah, well, that's great if you're coaching 10 people at once because suddenly you're making $2,000 an hour. You're great. But if you're coaching one person at a time, that's not going to get you where you want to go. Um,
Right.
so you focus. We talked a little bit about, knowing your numbers and understanding the finances and understand about that. Um, what are some of the other key things that someone who is really, you talked about those leaks in the hole. I guess what are some of those other leaks in your business that people may not think about that they should be focusing on?
Sure. So, one of the other big ones that I find a lot of my clients have a tendency to have a major issue with is follow up. I called this person, I left a message for them. One of my mentors says calling and leaving a message is not reaching out to your client, right? You actually have to talk to them because if you don't, how many of us, we get a million text messages, a million voicemails, and and emails, we outright ignore them, right? And they're so easy to ignore. But if I'm actually talking with you right now, Lori, and I'm asking you about whatever it is, you and I are having a conversation. That is an actual point of contact. If you think about the follow up that many of us are doing, we'll send an email out to a client that we had a conversation with, and we'll ask them, what do you think? And we'll try another email. We'll leave a voicemail. We'll send, whatever text message or some sort of additional contact. And we say, well, I'm reaching out and they're just not getting back to me. Now, here's the thing. Do you think that they're sitting around waiting for you to reach out to them? The old joke is, I'm sitting by my phone waiting for him to call.
Right.
We're not doing that, right? We're thinking about our own lives. We've got our own needs, and we're not waiting for somebody to simply pick up the phone and call us. And
Yeah.
so if we're trying to reach a client and we're saying, well, I sent them 10 emails and they didn't get back to me, and then we're just writing them off as not interested, well, you know what? That's a hole in the business because 10 emails, are you sure they're even being delivered? Is it going into their junk folder? I don't know about you, but for me, I look at my junk folder and I'm completely ignoring that thing, right? Every now and then I may take a look just in case something gets stuck there, but I'm not going in and checking it all the time. And by the time you finish your 10 emails, that may have gone by over a 3, 4 week period. And if I only check it monthly, that's why I'm not getting back to you. And so think about what that means, right? The other thing is also not finding the partners in your business that can really help you get even more opportunities. I mentioned earlier about the JV or the strategic relationships that you can be doing in your business, right? Think about that gutter and the roofer as an example. If you can find people that are talking to the exact same folks that you are talking to, those are ideal people to help you grow your business. Too many of us say, it's not worth it. I've tried it before. I don't know how to do it. I can't seem to get people. I get a whole bunch of folks who raise their hand and say, yes, I want to do something with you. And then you know what? They never do anything.
Yeah.
Again, they're not waiting to do something for you. It's got to be, how are we both benefiting? Right? It's not the me. It's us. If we both benefit, then we're going to keep on doing it. There's a way to nurture relationships. There's a way to create the relationships. And I talk all about this in my joint venture guide that will offer you absolutely free. You just have to give me your name and email, and you get the guide. And we'll talk about that later. But a
Right.
way, though, for you to really be getting that value.
Yeah, no, there you had a couple great points there, Jennifer. I want to
Thank you.
mention a couple. First, it's interesting you talk about the follow up. I want to share two stories that are interesting about follow up. One, there was someone I was trying to reach out to for a franchise, the franchise I used to own. I knew he would be a great client. I knew he needed what I offered, and I met him briefly, um, or I met someone in his company who told me to talk to him. I sent him numerous emails. I called him and left him messages. I texted him. I did everything like where I felt like I was a stalker. I mean, I felt like, well, the funniest thing is I was at a networking event a few weeks later and he was there and I was like, oh, I'll just go talk to him. And I talked to him and I introduced myself and I'm like, yeah, you probably saw. And he was like, I said, no, I never heard of you before. He had, I think I sent him like 20 emails. I left probably like 5 messages. So I'm like, oh, I'm not trying to stalk you, but I was referred to you. And he was like, oh, okay, let's talk. But until I met him in person, none of the, or actually spoke to him. So that's just really showing what you meant. But you talk a little bit about networking events or how people go and they don't have an agenda. For me too, the one really important thing is not just to, hey, what do you do? What do you do? Great. You really have to build those relationships and do that. I once met someone, this was in my old job, but I met someone at a networking event and we developed this relationship and he was not the person who bought what I was selling at the time and he knew it. But we still had this conversation. We got to know each other. He actually said to me, well, if I ever do need you, I'll call you. The funny thing is, so we kind of had, bumped into each other every couple of years. This person moved into a job where he was buying what was selling 7 years later. And he called me up and was like, I'm ready now. I'm ready to buy your product. So follow up is so important. And sometimes we think, oh, I didn't follow up. It's been 2 weeks. It's too late. It's never too late. If you had a good contact and you let it slip through for 3, 6 months, you can still follow up and say, hey, I just found your card, or, oh, I was thinking about you. I didn't, we never kept in touch, but I'd like to restart the conversation because follow up is so important. And just because you let it go doesn't mean, it's over. I know a number of people who have followed up after, dropping the ball on keeping in touch and restarted those partnerships or collaborations or business. So I definitely wanted to
Absolutely.
mention that.
Can I just throw one more thing out there?
Sure.
You mentioned the follow up and the network. And one thing that a lot of people probably have, and I've got a stack of cards here on my desk too from different events that I've been at over the last couple of weeks. Very often, we come by these stack of cards that are from years ago, and we look at them and we're like, who the heck is this person? But one of the things that you really can do is you can send them a note right now, today, and say, hey, we met a really long time ago. I am so sorry. Probably is my fault, but we dropped the ball. We never touched base again after we originally met. And I just wanted to know, what are you up to these days? You're not trying to sell, you're not doing anything, you're just trying to restart a conversation. Just like you with that person that you were going after. By the time that you see them, it's an opportunity then that you can restart a new conversation. Or that person that you mentioned 7 years later finally was in a position to buy what you were selling. A lot of times, you never know how that's going to change. Reach out to them.
Yeah, I love that restarting conversations and just curiosity. I think when we're curious about what other, that's the thing. A lot of people say, "Well, I don't want to be pushy," and that's I feel like, and I think that has to do with their millionaire mindset, or just I feel like they're being, if I want to make a lot of money, I have to be a pushy salesperson. I have to really be, and I don't want to be that person. And it really isn't. It's about being curious. It's about asking questions. It's about seeing, what you have in common with people. And once you do that, business can naturally, business associates can naturally happen because you get to like someone, them, you trust them, and you're happy to refer them, you're happy to work with them, and you remember them. So that reaching out, yeah, I love that idea. I've actually, someone started occasionally when if someone gives me a business card, I'm like, can I take a picture of you with your business card? So at least when I find that card later, I remember, who you were and where we met. And this way I have that information. So I love that, Jennifer. Yeah, great ideas about networking.
Thank you.
So I know you said you had mentioned the JV and your JV guide. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So, again, like I was saying before, joint ventures is one of those things that I do with a lot of my clients. I help them start figuring out how to create these joint ventures. And is it okay if I quickly go through an example of one of my
Sure.
clients?
Yeah, please
So,
do.
here's an example. My client was a florist. And I talk about this in all of the programs that I do. I bring this one client up. But this florist client happened to be a couple doors down from a jeweler. So think about where I'm going here, right? There's two primary event chains in the florist business. We're going to go with the happy one, the bridal market, right? So the guy comes in, he's getting ready to propose to his girlfriend, and he gets the ring. The jeweler says, go next door to the florist and get a dozen roses, and there's a discount or whatever it may be as part of this process. But then from the moment they get engaged until the wedding, and even after, but there's an entire event chain, right? You start dealing with the hall, the officiant, the caterer, the DJ or band, whatever you're going to have, the photographer, the printer, the baker, the all of these people that are in this overall event chain in the bridal market. If each one is in a position to be sending business up and down that event chain, there's huge opportunity. But what we ended up doing was we took it a step further and we came up with a trusted vendor guide.
Hmm.
Because by having all of these people that everybody gets to hand out to the folks coming in the door, you know what that does? It reduces anxiety and it reduces all of the additional angst and everything that is involved in the process because we know everybody works well together. This caterer already knows this photographer, knows this hall, knows the officiant, knows the florist, knows everyone. So nobody is surprised the day of, oh, I thought they were going to be doing this, right? At my own wedding, the florist completely screwed up, right? Long story. But
Yeah.
if it would have been a lot different, if it would have been something that could have been a little easier to deal with, there would have been a lot more opportunities. for everybody to really be benefiting. So we did this whole trusted vendor guide. And then we also came up with a 5 things every bride should know on their wedding day. And it
Mm,
included a couple of simple, yeah, I kind of knew that kind of things. But if you're not reminded and clobbered over the head a couple of times, it's like, all right, I know it, but doesn't mean I'm going to be paying any attention, right? How many of us try new makeup all the time, right? We have a major event coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to try new makeup. Well, what if we break out? Especially before our wedding. We don't want pictures like that.
right.
So, what do? Right? Those are one of the things in the guide. So again, this kind of joint venture idea is something that we put together to really make it stand out. And if you go to jenniferrglass.com, that's 2 N's, 1 F, jenniferrglass.com, you can get that free joint venture guide. It'll help you really figure out who your ideal partners are, how to structure the deal, how to nurture the deal, and really start seeing benefits coming in. And then, is it okay, Lori, if I just throw in one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. So I also have a JV group that 2 partners and I started up. We happen to be meeting tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So wherever you are in the world, 5:30 New York time tomorrow, we are meeting. It is a Zoom group. And if you get that joint venture guide and you respond back to me saying, how do I get on the JV for All group meeting tomorrow? I'll send you over that information as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I love the idea of joint ventures in that guide. I'm going to download that guide to see if you have something in there I don't know about. But it's interesting. People, I have my business is done for you retreats where I actually work with people to help them do retreats. I do the retreats for them, I run them for them. And often I'll interview on my show a retreat host or someone who has a retreat venue. And people are always like, isn't that competition? It's like, no, those are partners, those are JVs. Because if I want to do a retreat and I can't be there to facilitate it, I know people I could send, I can hire to do that. If I'm going to find a place and someone wants to retreat in, I don't know, Florida, say, I want to know who I can trust, who has a great venue in Florida, so I don't have to settle it out. And it's interesting that when you do these JV partners, some people feel like, well, we're competing for their money. And it's like, no, you're actually helping your clients. You're not competing for their money. And instead of, trying to get a bigger piece of the pie, you're just really making a bigger pie. So I love that idea of the vendor guide. And I mean, you can apply that to anything, not just a wedding. You can apply that to coaching, get together with partners, and this is your trusted business coach, this is your trusted life coach, this is your trusted relationship coach, and you can work together. So that was a great idea. Well, Jennifer, this
Thank
has been
you.
great. And yep, go get Jennifer R Glass, 2 N's, 1 F, and make sure you have the R.com. You can get that, download that JV guide. And if you're interested tomorrow, reach out to Jennifer. Before we do end, I want to ask, as I do all my guests, for if you had just one tip, one thing you can share with the audience, what would you like to share?
One tip would be take action, right? We do way too much. We think too much. We learn too much. We discussed a couple of ideas here, even in the almost 30 minutes that we've been on. Too many people, they'll come up, and it's really funny. Too many people come up to me after I do presentations. They're like, I took 20 pages of notes. That's really nice. It gives you a nice ego boost. And I didn't do it from anyone else. 20 pages from you. Okay, even better. First question I ask though is, what are you going to do? Because if all you're doing is you're taking notes, it's not going to do anything. You need to actually take action. The only way to start making a difference is by actually implementing and doing something with the information that you just got. So, what I want you to do is think about what you heard over the last half hour. Maybe go back, listen again, because the first time you heard it for what's actually happening, second time you may get an idea in the nuance of what you can actually do, and then map out a plan and get to it.
I love that. Yeah, taking action is so important because nothing happens until you take action and stuff. People so often, well, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. It's like, well, you're never going to be completely ready. So just do it. And you can't be ready until you take action because that action tells you what you still need to do more. People, even like when people have a program or an event or they want to plan the whole thing, and it's like until you start trying to put it out there, you don't know if it's going to work. So I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great tip, Jennifer. So, well, thank you so much. This has been great. I think there's some really great info here. You can listen to this over and over again. It's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, or not, it's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn, it's on YouTube. If you do go to my YouTube, please consider subscribing because I do these interviews every Monday, and there's a lot of great things there. You can download the transcripts. You can get them. One tip I learned recently: people they take a transcript and they copy it and they paste that transcript into their AI, whether it's ChatGPT, and they say, based on my business, what should I do first? It's a great way to take action and get somebody else's opinion on what in that transcript was the most valuable for you. So thank you, Jennifer, for being my guest. This was great information.
Thank
Remember,
you.
jenniferrglass.com. You can get the JV guide, and also you can reach out to Jennifer if you have any questions there. Next week, my guest is going to be BJ Strom. BJ is a very interesting person. She actually lives in Alaska, like kind of off the beaten path. But she is going to talk a little bit about we're going to talk about imposter syndrome and confidence, and a little bit more about how that can really change the results you get to, and can actually help you take action, because a lot of times we feel like we're not good enough, and that's why we don't take action. So join me next Monday with BJ, and have a fantastic week. And thank you. Bye bye.